Welcome to this explainer. So, have you ever walked away from a day where literally everything went perfectly? You were incredibly productive at work, you played the unconditionally supportive friend, and you navigated every single social interaction without even a hint of conflict. But then, you get home, and you feel this crushing, hollow exhaustion that a good night's sleep simply cannot fix. Now, you might assume you're just tired, or maybe lacking discipline, but there's actually a much deeper reason for that specific depletion. You've basically built a life that is perfectly legible and completely safe for everyone else, while your own soul is just screaming behind a mask.
Today, we're going to look into exactly why that happens. We're going to see why your brain actually hates the success you're chasing, and how everything radically shifts the moment you stop carrying the weight of a performance that, quite frankly, was never meant for you in the first place.
The famous psychologist Carl Jung perfectly described this exact state of being. He said, "You are currently living in maximum adaptation to society. Basically, you're doing all the right things and meeting everyone's expectations, but it is actively costing you minimum access to yourself. You are literally trading your own internal energy just to maintain an external performance." Which brings us to Section 1, the biological trap, and why your brain absolutely hates abstract success.
To understand why this perfectly legible life feels so incredibly heavy, we have to look at a brutal neurobiological reality pointed out by James Clear. Your brain actually isn't designed for these high-performance long-term goals you keep setting for yourself. Your mind is still operating on the evolutionary software of a lazy hunter-gatherer. It wants to conserve energy, avoid effort, and just seek out quick dopamine hits. So when you try to force yourself into a disciplined routine using sheer willpower alone, you are essentially fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming with, a handful of motivational quotes? As long as your environment rewards ease, your brain is going to choose the path of least resistance every single time.
Let's move on to Section 2, the polished prison, and how we go about surviving other people.
You see, this exhaustion goes way deeper than just biology. It's heavily reinforced by a psychological structure you built just to survive other people. Jung called this the persona. It's a mask we wear to be acceptable and safe in a world that already has roles and codes of conduct waiting for us. Most of us developed this mask back in childhood as a brute necessity for survival. You figured out that being easy or quiet made the air in the room feel lighter, right? But now, as an adult, that mask acts as a 24/7 internal monitoring system. It's constantly scanning the room for disappointment before you even know your own truth. You've become so fluent in the language of other people's needs that you've totally lost access to what's on the other side of your own mask.
And this mask actually manifests physically in your environment too. Are you designing your living spaces for maximum legibility to others? Like, do you keep unread books on your shelf strictly for the aesthetic, just to look smart or correct to your guests? Or maybe you fear that rearranging your life or your furniture makes you inconvenient to your partner or friends. Your room literally becomes a polished prison of who you think you should be. Every time you look at an object that represents an expectation you don't actually hold, you leak psychic energy. No wonder you feel totally hollowed out at the end of the day.
All right, Section 3, reclaiming internal authority and the power of being inconvenient.
Everything radically shifts the moment you drop this surveillance system and stop explaining or justifying every single choice just to avoid negative views. Jung argued that true health requires fidelity to the law of one's own being. Now, what does that actually mean for you? It means you have to accept that disappointing someone else is not always a failure. In fact, often, it is the most honest, authentic thing you can possibly do.
Think about it. If you are always available and always agreeable, you aren't really a person. You're an emotional emergency button that people press for their own relief and then just put back on the shelf. But embracing internal authority looks vastly different. By choosing to practice strategic silence instead of apologizing to fill the void, and acting as a sovereign individual, you finally allow the real, sometimes confusing version of you to actually be seen.
Section 4, architecting your true self by engineering your space.
To make this shift permanent, James Clear teaches us that we have to move from fighting our brains with sheer willpower to intelligently designing our environment. He calls this choice architecture. It's all about setting up your physical and social space so that the right behavior becomes the inevitable path of least resistance. If you truly want to be a sovereign individual, you must make your boundaries obvious and your self-betrayals completely invisible.
You can actually audit your space right now with 2 really simple steps. First, make your desired habits obvious. Want to read more? Put the book right on your pillow. Want to work out? Leave your shoes right by the bed. You are essentially setting a trap for your future self. Second,
Make your unwanted habits invisible by removing the physical cues that trigger them. Want to break the habit of doom scrolling? Put the phone in a totally different room. When you do this, you are no longer fighting your biology. You are manipulating your space so that being true to yourself is the default.
You can also bring this choice architecture into your social interactions using something called habit stacking. This is where you connect a new act of authenticity to an old routine. So for example, try following the end of a conversation with a moment of strategic silence, rather than rushing into a panicked apology just to smooth things over. When you finish a sentence, just let the silence sit there for a few seconds. I promise it won't kill anyone. You aren't just changing a conversational habit here. You are actively casting a vote for a new identity as someone who fully owns their own time and energy.
And that brings us to Section 5, the radical threshold, where we talk about owning your energy.
The fear you feel about breaking out of this polished prison is not a warning to retreat. It is a profound sign that you are standing at the threshold of real life. No one is coming to save you from this mask. You built the cage, and you are the only one who can walk through the door. It starts with taking radical responsibility and delivering one clean, simple no that arrives without a 3-paragraph explanation. And most importantly, you have to decide that your peace is worth infinitely more than their approval.
So, if you are finally ready to stop being a statistical cog in everyone else's machine and start acting as a sovereign individual, the author of your own story, I want you to make a symbolic declaration in the comments right now. Just type, "I choose my peace." This isn't just a comment, it is an invocation and a serious commitment to your new identity. And please, don't stop here. The journey of individuation is long, and the explainer on your screen right now is the absolutely essential next step to help you master your presence and your power. I'll see you over there.